So, hi Rufus, thank you very much for this webinar here for the community of the Open Knowledge Brasil. I will speak in English at first, but then I will introduce you in Portuguese, okay? This is an open space that we created here in Brazil to invite people, inspiring people around the world that are working with open data, open knowledge, and more more open world. So we are very happy that you are with us, that you accepted our invite. So, vou falar agora um pouquinho em português. Agradeço muito a presença do Rufus, ter aceito o nosso convite. Esse é um espaço que a gente criou, foi uma ótima ideia da IASO, no seu momento, de abrir um espaço para convidar pessoas que estão inspirando, pessoas do mundo inteiro que estão inspirando com o seu trabalho para construir um mundo mais aberto, para fomentar a abertura de conhecimento, de dados, e acho que ninguém melhor do que o Rufus Pollock para fechar esse primeiro ciclo. A gente já teve mais 3 webinários. Acho que ninguém melhor do que o Rufus para fechar esse primeiro ciclo. Ele é o fundador da Open Knowledge Internacional e talvez uma das pessoas que mais tem inspirado e mobilizado no mundo para avançar nessa agenda, para construir um mundo mais aberto. Então, eu não vou me estender. Agradeço. Thank you very much, Rufus. I don't know if Yaso, would you like to say something about Rufus or this space, the webinar space, or we can start with him? So, Rufus, it's yours. Please start your presentation. I ask for the people that are following us to send some questions in the chat. I will put in our chat here in the room, but you can start your presentation right now. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have to say I'm very sure. I had no idea. I had not prepared a planned or presentation, so I didn't know what the webinar was. So maybe it'd be good for you to give me some context of what I should talk about at the beginning of the webinar, because I didn't have, other than the questions you sent me, I wasn't understanding I would prepare a presentation per se, and who I'm presenting to.
Okay, maybe the most important thing about your presentation and your present here is the role of the civil society in this construction of an open, more open world and more open society. We already talked with people from governments. We already talked with people from universities that are working with this agenda. And with you, we'll want to know more how from the civil society we can work like with more impact in this agenda. Maybe this the most important thing that we would like to talk with you. There is some questions that we already sent you about your work and the things that you already but maybe this is the most important thing about the webinar.
Yeah, I think so. What I would really like to talk about, which I'll talk about to begin with, is that the big vision around open knowledge. So the context, I mean, the big vision is really quite simple. The big vision starts from the question of how can we use the information age and digital technology? How can we use the arrival of these incredible devices, computers, communication networks, the internet, these incredible things which have accelerated massively our ability to share information and to create knowledge and information? How do we best use them to make a better world for ourselves, for our societies, for our children? And in particular, there is this specialness about digital technology. It's not just another advance like when we had if you like, we had the agricultural, revolution several thousand years ago when we domesticated wheat, or even the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago. There's this incredible change with information technology that we are moving, the digital and information technology, by their name says it to you. It's a hint. They're about information, and information that it can be shared costlessly, and that you can't do that with a car. You cannot push a button and have 1 million cars, or a car for everybody on the planet. You cannot push a button and turn 1 loaf of bread into 1 million loaves of bread. But you can push a button and turn 1 copy of a computer program into 1 million copies, 1 copy of a book into 1 million copies of a book. So there's this incredible possibility of a digital age. And the point is that the point is that openness is the key policy, the key choice of how we use this technology, this digital technology, and this costless copying to really benefit the greatest number of people, to mean that people who are sick get medicines, that more people are healthy, that children and adults receive education and have access to culture and knowledge, that science and technology are as innovative and creative as they can be, and that the fruits of that innovation and creativity are as widely shared as possible. And this is a systemic and systematic choice and change. It's not really about government transparency, in fact. Really, government transparency is actually something of a sideshow in this debate, because what you're doing with openness is transforming the nature and structure of the economy of the 21st century to make it fairer, freer, more innovative. Now, that's the big story. So it's digital technology is arriving. It's creating an information age. Openness is the policy choice to unlock the potential of that revolution for good. It's that simple. And what it means is we want openness for all information that is not personal. So we're not, all information, movies, music, medicines, apps, algorithms, every piece of information that isn't personal information, we want it to be open. That is the world we are trying to create at Open Knowledge, ultimately. Now, I want to just make it that really concrete for a moment to illustrate the impact of these choices. Because I think people don't, I think we're not always seeing the impact of these policies, we kind of think that it's very, to be honest, it's very abstract. When you talk about information to people, they're like, what's that got to do with the price of bread? Humans, including myself, we live in a life, our lives are, do we have a job today? Is there going to be food on the table? Am I going to, can I get treated in the hospital, if I get sick, the everyday things and information policy. And so I want to illustrate its impact in a couple of areas that are very concrete and very present and affect everybody, including everyone who, most people who pay no attention to digital technology much other than, or digital policy. So one is the election of Donald Trump. So when this has been, I think, a surprise to everyone, including often to many people, including his supporters and those who don't support him. And it's been a dramatic political event of the last year, if not like the last decade. And people are often wondering why that is. And they're like, is it fake news is a problem, or, it's Twitter, look, whatever it is. But actually, I would want to suggest to people that if you want to look at one of the fundamental causes of Donald Trump's election and of the general shift going on and politically often around the world, you can trace it back to our having a closed digital economy rather than an open one. And just to explain that in a little bit of detail to see how big the impact of our choices about open information or closed information is, that Donald Trump was a significant portion of Donald Trump's support came from working class, blue collar, or white collar, but lesser well paid white collar workers in the United States who have seen their jobs grow less secure, their wages stagnate, if not in fact decline in real terms in the last 15 years. And while at the same time, a portion of that society, the richest portion, for example, the United States, has got dramatically richer. And they are angry and upset. They see job insecurity, they see lower wages, they see a tougher life for themselves and their children, while the rich are getting richer. And that makes them angry, and they look for someone to blame, and they've been given someone to blame. It might be, we don't have tariffs, it's the Chinese, or it's immigrant, whatever it is that gets offered to them, maybe by Donald Trump or whatever, and they have seized that. But if you look behind it, I would offer that what they are seeing is the impact of a closed digital economy. 6 of the 8 richest people on the planet are digital tech billionaires. Digital technology, when you combine it with proprietary exclusive ownership of that technology under patent and copyright regime and the current regime we have, leads to massive and growing inequality. It leads to a winner-takes-all economy. It is an economy that looks like a casino. A few people go in it. Many go in it, rather. Many go in it. They bet, and a very lucky few, leave incredibly rich. The Mark Zuckerbergs, the Sergey Brins, the Bill Gates. And the rest leave empty-handed. Meanwhile, also, those whose jobs are taken, if you like, by automation, to the replacement of digital technology, they don't receive any benefits from this. They instead see their jobs disappear. And that leads to this widening gap that we see in countries like the United States and elsewhere in Europe and other countries around the world, and is leading to huge political changes, political earthquakes. So I would offer to you that the closed digital economy that we have seen since the 1970s, the massive growth in digital technology in the 70s, combined with closed model, has led, is a major cause of things like the election of Donald Trump. It is on that scale. And so the choice of open information is crucial. and it affects everybody. It is not some issue about a little bit better governance or maybe a little bit more innovation when we have some open data. No, this is a fundamental structural choice that affects the basic way our economy will work and the way that the benefits of that economy are distributed, the fruits of that economy, who gets them, and also how innovative. A closed digital economy actually is less innovative. At the moment, it's concealed by the fact that innovation just continues to go up as it has done for a long time. You know, we're so confused that, oh my God, we've got iPhones, that we don't realize the impact of the closed economy actually on innovation. But basically, these are the kinds of impact, and it's the reason that openness is so crucial. I'm just pausing there, Marco, so if you've got any questions, or whether I can address other questions. You've pasted some in here in the list, but just want to pause there.
I have a question. In the last few years, we had a change in the scenario of open data, with like this kind of more conservative politics that you cite, like Donald Trump, Temer, or I don't know, but this kind of governments that they don't see open data as a priority. So speaking of technologies, do you think that thinking in protocols that can circumvent the governmental directions in order to maintain data in safe places like IPFS or peer-to-peer technologies, or because in Brazil we depend a lot of data of the government because they centralize data, especially about agriculture and other important economic sector that we have. So it's all centralized in the government. It's not about the companies or any kind of agencies about having data centralized in these governmental agencies. So once they don't open it, we can't have it. Even that we can collect it in different ways. I mean, directly with the players of these sectors, but it's not the same thing. So how do you see these scenario for the open data in terms of technology? Do you think that we need new protocols or new technologies or new strategies to deal with that?
Yeah, I got the question. So the question, if I recap it, is I think you're saying somewhat that some governments might be less friendly to transparency and open data. And then maybe we could use technology somehow to decentralize data that would address data discipline. First of all, I just want to reiterate something. Right now, like, open government data is incredibly useful and valuable, but it is a small part of the story. The thing we've got to get right now is this is much bigger, and it's much bigger than data. What I just talked about the information economy was not about data. I mean, it includes data, but it was not limited to it. So absolutely, more open data is important, but so is open software, so is open algorithms. The issue here is about the fundamental issue is about kind of innovation, inequality, freedom. So I just want to emphasize that. And that governments opening up data is fantastic, but we're talking about, my real interest right now in general would be to say, how do governments fund properly an open information economy in which they pay innovators and creators in some proper way for open information? I mean, right now, the open source models we have are very limited. They work to some extent, but they're quite limited. With open data as an example, the government has kind of basically taken citizens' money, or we all together, as our governments are asked to some extent, have gone and taken money and used it to do things like create maps or create national statistics or collect them or whatever, and then share them out. And that is a great model, but we need to expand that massively. You know, we want to really have, if we want all, and just let me repeat it, all non-personal information, all of it to be open. and I include here not government, I'm talking about the whole of it, we need a way to fund that properly, right? Now, just take one illustrative example right now. In many countries in the world, take medicines and pharmaceuticals. That's an information good that we, they may be pills, but what's in a new medicine is information. We already basically use governments to buy all of that information. We either buy it, if you like, by paying for research in universities to create the drugs, to do the underlying research, or we pay for it through our healthcare systems where we buy the medicines and patented medicines. And I would like a model where we replace those patents, we replace those copyrights. Rather than having a monopoly right that limits access, we have a remuneration right for innovators and creators that entitles them to get paid, entitles them to get compensated, and to get paid and compensated at the similar level that we compensate today for those things. The amount of money we spend on patented drugs, but we pay for it through what I would call market innovation funds or innovation market funds that allow those things to be open at the same time. I'm not going to go right now into, we can talk more in detail if you want to ask questions, but I want to, so that's point one, I just want to say. Second, your question is, so first of all, I want to address a point you raised, which is the state is great. We seem to have an assumption of, sometimes I hear that the kind of state, like, yeah, let's decentralize everything. We can't trust the state. No, the state is us. The current government system we have is the best thing we've designed so far. I am extremely skeptical of what I call the techno-solutionist stuff. I mean, IPFS or whatever it is great, but it's not going to change political structure in any way. And there's this techno delusion out there a little bit that like technology somehow can fix what's not working in democracy. That is just an illusion, and a dangerous illusion, because it distracts us from actual engagement politically. And by political engagement, I don't mean necessarily you start a party, but I mean engaging as a citizen in how your country works. And in the system of government, in the traditional, and there's no quick fixes for those things. There's no voting apps that are going to fix everything. And so, so that's one. On the line of question of like, is data going to disappear? Are there some governments who might take it offline? Well, yeah, then we should cache it. I don't think we need IPFS for that or any fancy technology. There's things called hard disks, we can use them. But, as a general point, we have to trust our governments or work to make them so that we can trust them. The state is great. The state is amazing. It's one of the most extraordinary things we as humanity has created, is the solution to collective action problems. And at the moment, often, there seems to be this distrust of them. And I mean, it's an interesting question is why, because in general, the states are performing better than they ever have in terms of, or nearly as well, at least, as they ever have. Maybe they've got a little bit worse in the last 20 years, but, in terms of individual security, risk of death, healthcare, education, they may not be as good as we want, absolutely. So, I don't know, I mean, I don't know, the stuff maybe in the US, obviously there's some real issues there, and real concerns about the current government and the attitude on things like climate change, absolutely. And we should be caching data if you can, great. But fundamentally, we should be engaging to get governments that we want and that work, rather than trying to build something separate. Does that make, I hope that, answers that question, which is a great question. I don't know if there's anything further on that one. Do you think, there's a good question, do you think the movement around AI, ethics, and transparent government can join forces with open knowledge movements? If yes, do you have any plans on that? So, yeah, I think people got very excited about AI. I think people are a bit overexcited. What they mean, I think, though, is when they talk about AI, they mean obviously machine, data-driven decision-making, algorithms that are taking decisions. As often the case, some history is in order. They've been actually around data-driven algorithms for a long time, quite a long time. But I absolutely think it's an opportunity to request more transparency. But again, I'd almost go beyond transparency to say we want openness. I don't think that there should be algorithms for anything really that aren't open. I think they should all be open. And the data behind them. And not just for transparency and accountability reasons, but as a way of making a better information economy, an economy that's more innovative, more creative, fairer and freer. And that's why we want to do it. And transparency is a big part of that, absolutely. And again, though, we need a way to be able to pay algorithm creators in a fair way, a way that incentivizes innovation in those areas. But, you know, quite simply, I don't think those algorithms should be closed. So I think there is a connection there. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't really think there is an ethical dimension to it. But I think it's quite limiting. I mean, I think the ethical part is a really important part to emphasize, but I think it's a relatively narrow part of it. And because the danger is you could satisfy that in all kinds of ways that wouldn't lead to a true open information economy. You could have people who just supervise the algorithms, and there's a supervising commission that checks that the algorithms don't discriminate against people in some way or whatever. And that's, I think, very limited transformation. And if anything, actually entrenches further the current monopolies that we have. So I'm going to tell it straight to Luciano. I am very, 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 very skeptical about the blockchain, decentralized internet, and cryptocurrency. I am super. Yeah, I'm. You know, you can read a blog post of mine called the kind of, I think it's not quite cool, but like I think it's called Reflection on the Blockchain. But it's kind of why I'm not a blockchain believer. I don't quite know why people are. I mean, I've talked to quite a lot of people about blockchain. I think it's interesting technology. I mean, it's kind of the essences of it have been around for a while, and maybe they're coming together in an interesting way. I think there will be applications. I think there will be value in banking and other areas. But the hopes that people often in our community seem to have about it, of it somehow decentralizing power in some ill-defined way that they talk about, is just delusional in my view. Yeah, I'm being a bit, trying to be like more, you know, it's like, yeah, trying to be a more kind of like, yes, and. So, you know, I think it's great there's this energy. I do wonder it's distracting people into a kind of techno-solutionist mindset again. Oh, you know, rather than going and dealing with democracy itself, like, you know, let's go and actually engage in politics. We'll invent some new techno thing that will kind of somehow magically decentralize power, but without any actual detail of how that works, really. So I would urge you to, I mean, I'd urge you to really bring a really critically constructive skepticism to that area. To go back, why is openness so interesting, in my view? Because it's a systematic policy change. It is the fundamental policy switch in an information age between you've got closed or you've got open. And it determines, it's basically an ownership question. It's about how ownership of that information, how control of that information works, who gets to derive value and in what way from that information is determined. And you're about to be in an information age. That's kind of fundamental. The blockchain, and you could see it, doesn't really solve any of the challenges, for example, in collective organizing, which are just hard problems and aren't solved by open data either, by the way. You know, it's just the hard thing about hard things in, you know, making democracy or collective action in companies or any collective action problem, group action problem. Blockchain, as far as I can tell, has no real solutions to that. It's got a bunch of kind of slightly mumbo-jumbo-y that wave your hands about, oh, it's all decentralized somehow and there's distributed consensus. Yeah, but, you know, you got you know, you had voting, you've had companies limited by shares with voting rights for centuries. So, okay, I'm pausing there.
Rufus, I have one question. First of all, I would like to know how do you see the future of the Open Knowledge, the different chapters, the Open Knowledge International, which is your vision about the future of the network that you helped to create it? This is the first question. And the second one, and it's related with an action that we are developing here in Brazil. I would like to know which is your vision about the privacy of our data used by the government and enterprises. Now in Brazil is like the government is constructing the new digital ID, and we created like a charter for the government, telling how we see or we understand that they have to create this new digital ID. But I would like to know more about your vision about the privacy of the personal data and the uses of the personal data for the enterprise and government. So those two questions. And just one more thing, we have more 10 or 15 minutes, so maybe it's the last or one of the last questions, right?
To create an open information age of the kind we've discussed, a world where all non-personal information is open, it's going to take something. It's going to take something to have our governments, us to get together and persuade our fellow citizens and our governments to build that, to put the funding in place, or take the funding that's already there and direct it in this way to create open information at scale. And to do that takes a movement. It takes a movement. So just as, for example, the environmental movement over the last 30, 40 years has managed to create an incredible understanding that the environment matters, that it matters to the fundamental of our lives, to us having a planet that works for us. So we need an open movement to make it clear to people that we need openness if we are going to have an information age that works for us. So for me, I would love to see the Open Knowledge Network collaborating with other groups and with each other to build an open movement, to build a movement to make an open information age. I think that's really, that's pumped on that point. There's more things I could say, but I think that's sufficient. On the privacy question, I think the basic principles are the kind of principles that actually Open Knowledge, I and others at Open Knowledge International and generally have set out for several years around personal data. It is distinct, obviously, from open data and open information, but I think you can apply similar principles. And I set them out at the My Data conference last year again. If you like, you can call them the My Data principles, which is that just as we should be empowered, all of us with access to kind of non-personal information, we should have an open information age, so we should have access and control over, if you like, our personal information. And we should get a choice, and we should have we should have the ability to choose how that information is used and who it's shared with easily. Yeah, and so I think that's almost the principle number one, is that people should be building data systems that allow for automated, machine-readable access and control over your data so that you can choose where it's shared and how. Yeah, I think that's the most basic point I can make there. That's the simplest point that I can make. And yeah, and I'd love to hear more actually about your charter, which I didn't yet know about. It's wonderful to hear that you've had input into that. That's a really important thing to be doing. So congratulations on that.
Great. Another question, Rufus. I will send you the chapter by email in Portuguese. Another question that we have here in the chat, in the YouTube chat, ask, how can we work in a country with more than 5,000 cities where we don't have a culture of production, a good production of information on open data in the government, he says. So we have here in Brazil more than 5,000 cities, local cities, and in the government, in those local governments, we don't have the culture of production of good information and neither open data. So how do you think that we can work with this context, with this situation? And maybe this will be the last question. If you people have another question, please send me by the chat and I will send to Rufus, okay?
Well, so the answer, Georgie, is first, almost everywhere is a bit like that. There's nowhere really that has great government information systems that I've been. I mean, some places obviously a lot are better than others, absolutely. Some places where there is no digital information at all. But the basic answer to you is to engage those people in government and to engage local citizens. I mean, the question of how is, why are we doing open data? We're doing it because we want to improve the lives of ourselves and our fellow citizens. We want a world that works really well. It works better than it currently does. And so I emphasize that because the other thing is to start with questions or challenges. Like, what is not working right now where open information or just having freer flow of information would make a difference, where it would allow someone to come up with a new solution, or for certain people to be informed who are not informed, or whatever it is. So start with why they want to do this. Like, what is it that's a problem right now? And not just for the government, but for citizens, because if you can get a small group, it's not all citizens, it's going to be normally some small group in that city or in that area who've got something they're concerned about. That's where you begin from. You begin from that community interest and concern. So start with that, why do you want to do something? And then come to the kind of how. Because the how is, well, you go and talk with the government and you support them, or you bug them, or you provoke, you push them to do something, or you encourage them. But always be going back to why we're doing this in the big picture of why we're doing this. So that's my thing, would be to ask people to get them engaged with why they want to do it, and then follow from that into the how, because it's going to vary from place to place. Okay.
So Rufus, for me, I would like to thank you very much. I don't know if Yazo has another question. If not, our webinars have 45 minutes, all of them. This is the format that we created. Obviously, maybe we have much more questions to ask you and more subjects to talk with you, but the important is to have this approach. So thank you very much for your presence and for your presentation. We expect to have your help and your support to Open Knowledge Brazil the next years and the next month. And obviously, if you have any suggestion for the Open Knowledge Brazil, will be very important for us. So thank you very much. Yazo, would you like to say something to Rufus?
I'll say one
No,
thing.
just.
I'll just say
Okay,
one.
go ahead.
Yazo, you go ahead and I'll say one thing before we end. Yazo.
No, it was just like saying thank you. I don't have the same vision. I don't share this vision that we have to trust in government with you, but I'm okay with that. Thank you for participating, and go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
Thank you. Well, I'll end with two things. So trust, I really think that trust in ourselves, in our fellow human beings, and ultimately in government, it can't be naive trust. Like, I know you said that, but it's so important. And there has to be a way to build it. You look at the most successful societies on earth, you know, often people think of, for example, the Nordic countries in Europe, and they have hugely high trust levels. They have very high trust levels. And I think it's just this essential thing. And that one of the reasons I do Open Knowledge is I have trust in some sense. I'm pragmatic. I'm not naive, I hope. I'm critically skeptical, but I trust in humans and in the future. I have hope for it. And it's why I think I'm so excited to finish about Open Knowledge Brazil. I think it's Ariel and Yazo and everyone else involved really realize how important you are and what an important and valuable job and contribution you are making and doing. You are involved in one of the issues of the 21st century that is going to determine the politics, the well-being, the economy of 21st century countries, of Brazil, of the US, of Europe, and others. And you are just so crucial. And you also, it's incredible to have that opportunity. It's really exciting. And I want to acknowledge you because it takes something to build and run an organization as you're doing in Brazil and to inspire people. People are often cynical. They're cynical about governments. They're cynical about change. They're cynical about the future. They're cynical about themselves. And fundamentally, Open Knowledge is built on a foundation of hope that we can transform things. We can go from the closed information economy we have to an open one, that we can build a better world. And I think it's just incredible what you guys are doing at the moment in Brazil. I know you're very active, and to go on doing that, and I want to go on listening to you. But thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Rufus. Eu concordo, eu vou falar em português, mas eu concordo 100% com o que você disse. A gente está trabalhando e é ativista, talvez, de uma das agendas mais importantes do século XXI. E eu fico feliz da comunidade da Open Knowledge Brasil tá crescendo e se ampliando com maior diversidade. A gente está participando de agendas que são tão importantes para o país e para o mundo. E, bom, muito obrigado, Rufus, sempre pelo teu olhar e a tua visão inspiradora. Your inspiring vision, thank you very much. E muito obrigado a todos que acompanharam o webinar. Thank you very much to everyone that follow us in the Open Knowledge Brazil and be with us in the webinar. Thank you very much.